Like, I can get the angle that he's coming from, but personally, I don't think so. And, there's a myriad of examples as to why I don't think so. But the bigger underlying meaning is, I don't think that they have to show you all the sides of themselves because
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who may include jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to speak on men because, well, for some reason it's like other people seem to be talking about men on the internet and they seem to get some things either very wrong or nearly perfectly right. So I'm just trying to bridge the gap to some degree. Actually, this isn't one of those episodes where I'm like, oh, this and this person is busy chatting a bunch of bull. Nah, like this one isn't even disproving things that are completely wrong. Like a lot of what is going to be said by other people on this podcast is going to be mostly true. And, it's just my kind of way of, trying to nudge it and push it a little bit forward and, try to position it pretty right. Because I feel like sometimes people think they have the right idea, but they don't have the right idea as well as they think they do, or so I believe. But the best way to know if I do have a pretty good idea myself is to listen all the way to the end, of which I hope you do. And should you like the episode, should you not like it, should you want to give a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic I should discuss, then the social media links are usually in the description below, and my DMs are always open. I am so thankful to each and every one of you that reaches out expressing that you've listened to the episode, that you like the episodes, whether it's the video ones where I'm doing the interviews, whether it's the ones I'm doing it solo and it's audio only. Like, I appreciate each and every one of you that listens. Let me just put it like that. Especially the ones that listen twice. And it's the same episode. Y'all have a special place in my heart. But I hope as many of you as possible are listening and you do listen to more episodes and you listen all the way till the end. And with that said, I probably should be getting to our main topic of this episode. But before I can do any of that, I want to kick things off by speaking on the close to perfect thing that I was talking about earlier when it comes to defining men. Now, while I was on X not too long ago, I stumbled across a particularly interesting question that was asked by a woman, and of course, because it's X and people will always want to give their opinions, was actually answered. But the answer that I got here is actually a very, very accurate, or should I say mostly accurate answer. And the weirdest, most interesting part about it was the fact that it was responded to by another woman. Like, it wasn't a man that said this accurately, it was a woman. And that kind of intrigued me, It's normally not common to see a lot of instances where women speak up for men and try to talk about men in a way that's accurate to men themselves. Like, that usually doesn't work. There's usually some sort of misguided shit that'll be said somewhere along the line, or some sort of bias that'll be made. But when it came to this one, it was particularly accurate for the most part. And instead of running around the entire thing, I will just describe the two of them real quick. So the lady who asked the question asked, and I quote, "Do men ever get tired of providing, or do they just get tired of being unappreciated while doing it?" End quote. To which the lady who responded said, and I quote, "I think men don't really get tired of providing because deep down they know it's part of their role and responsibility. What breaks them is when all their effort goes unnoticed, when they sacrifice sleep, health, and peace of mind just to make sure everyone is okay, but no one appreciates it. That silence, that lack of recognition, it eats them slowly. Men can handle the hustle, the pressure, even the stress, but what they can't handle is being made to feel like all that hard work means nothing. Truth is, men don't get tired of providing, they get tired of being unappreciated." End quote. And honestly, if I could leave it at that, I still wouldn't feel bad about it. Like, it is actually pretty dead on. Like, it's very, very dead on. It is pretty dead on as far as explanations go. And to be quite honest, like, it kind of goes back to something that a psychologist called Adam Lane Smith once mentioned, where he was busy talking about how, the best way to assist men who are going through something isn't to, give them love, but it's to give them purpose. And the analogy that he gave was, if you give a man purpose, he will crawl through broken glass with a smile. And it is actually pretty spot on. Like, for most guys, whenever we actually grow up as boys becoming men, and even when we become men, one of the things that we're kind of conditioned to do, or just kind of conditioned, from the jump, is the idea that responsibility trumps everything. Your duty trumps everything. So your duty, your responsibilities are going to go first, and then your desires and your likings and your wants and needs usually come right after that. And with women, it can be a little bit jumbled. And nowadays I feel like there's a lot of women that can decide to not do one thing and be like, no, I don't feel I want to do this, and they'll still be accepted because their desires can come first, and then whatever duties and responsibilities they feel they need to have or they should have can kind of come after that if they want them. With guys, it's not really something that works like that, in that for me as a man, it's not like I can decide whether I want to or I don't want to provide if I have a partner, if I have kids. Like, the moment I stop doing that, there's going to be all sorts of things that'll go wrong. First of all, I'll be told that I'm not fulfilling my duty as a man. Secondly, my reputation kind of dies along with that. And as that's busy happening, I'm not being considered as attractive. Imagine if men at some point just decided, we don't want to provide. How would that affect people? How many women would be complaining that, men today aren't providers? Isn't that something that women are complaining about today? And it's not like it's even our fault and we've refused. We're just in a position where we have a bunch of economic uncertainty and a bunch of economic hardship that's facing a lot of people. So we have a bunch of babes that are busy saying that men today aren't providers, men today, aren't being the kind of men that we were being told about back in the old days. And the reality of it is, a lot of these guys just aren't in the best economic position to actually give what it is that a lot of these women would want. And they're complaining right now. And if a guy provides, it's like, oh yeah, but that's his role to provide. So, for us guys, it's not like it's ever really been a choice for us. The whole duty responsibility bit of it has always made it a must. So it's not really been something that we can kind of decide whether we want or we don't want to do. Not unless if we risk our own, mate potential out here in the dating market. So for what it's worth, the whole thing of men's duties are blah, blah, and blah. For us guys, it's always been a given that we're going to have to do them one way or another. And it's one of those instances where we just kind of have to, do it whether we like it or we don't. So we kind of come to terms with the idea of life being like that for us. So when it comes to the point where we're doing it, the most that we can probably ask for is that we're appreciated. And unfortunately, there's not that many people that appreciate their partners a lot or enough, just for the work that they do. And so when you find a guy getting to a point, he's basically been working his ass off ever since he was a kid, getting to the point where he's like an adult. He's probably in his middle ages, he's in his 40s and all, and he's been doing pretty well. And he's been doing all of this just so that he could raise another family and take care of a couple of people. And he realizes that he's got a bit of extra cash. It's very common to see them deciding to go a route that is not particularly common for some of them. For some of them, they can choose to get a project car and work on it. Others might decide they're going to start doing road trips with their friends. Not like they're busy trying to just go and bag a couple of babes and shag them and shit. Sometimes it's just them wanting to explore the world and doing road trips. With other guys, they could be like, what, I was kind of pushed down this road by, say, for example, my father or the community, and this babe was even gotten for me, and now they start looking for babes that they actually do like. Although, that being said, it's not like I'm saying that I endorse infidelity. On this podcast, I don't endorse infidelity. But the point that I'm trying to make is, for men, we usually put our responsibilities and our duties first before anything. And once we can sort those out, at least to a good extent, then we start looking at our desires and our emotions. And if that's the case for us as men, if we could be appreciated a little bit more, we can do a lot of these duties and we can handle a lot more of these responsibilities with more of a smile, and they become easier to bear. It's like, imagine if, for example, you have a new mother and everyone's busy talking about how she's not taking care of the baby properly. Like, that would definitely affect her. But now, if you're there, you're telling her, hey, you're doing such a good job. I know you don't know your way around this. It's your first time. You've got this. And everyone is there to support whenever possible. Like, it makes the entire burden of motherhood that much lighter. And I'm sure anyone who's been a mom can probably admit that such a thing makes the whole burden of motherhood feel a lot lighter, in as much as the challenges are still going to be there and they'll still more or less be the same. But then again, with that said, I am not a mother, but I am a man, and what she said was dead spot on. Appreciate your men, appreciate the men around you, especially when they put in a lot of extra effort so that they can make your lives easier, because we probably don't have to all the time, but the fact that we do, we should definitely be appreciated for it. And with that said, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, sometime over the weekend, I was scrolling through IG, and while I was on the Explore page, I stumbled across a particularly interesting post where a man, or should I say an influencer by the name of Eli Mwenda, was speaking of the fact that men are struggling. Now, this clip was taken from an episode that he was a part of as a guest on the Just to Kick It Is a Blessing podcast, which is hosted by a man known as Tupac Keith. And, he said some particularly interesting things about why it is he believes men are struggling. Now, I want to let the clip play before I can give my thoughts on it, because while I don't think he's wrong, I don't think he's particularly right. And I will get to why in a moment. But first, let me let the clip play. So, without further ado,
I think men are struggling because of that, the thing I said that women have, where being able to be authentic. I think a lot of men struggle with authenticity, and so because they're not authentic, they look for somebody that seems authentic, and that person's still not real with themselves. An example is, I won't say the name, but like these toxic men online, that they're equating success and happiness to cars, misogyny, and big houses, and that sort of lifestyle. And I think because if a guy is not honest with himself about what he wants, he'll be like, okay, he seems happy, that must be what I want. And I feel like if we had more mentors, if we had more thought leaders that were okay with vulnerability and okay with showing the full rounded element of what a man is, and saying, like you say on this podcast, I've been through something, then I feel like guys will be honest with themselves, and then they'll be able to have those convos that we've been having with our friends, where you're driving for all those hours and you take the pain away. And I feel like if we're addressing the pain and you're having channels to expel that pain, then I feel like now when it gets to those critical moments where you're touch and go, am I going to be a statistic or am I not? You have somebody to call, rather than being like, no, everyone else seems fine.
Okay. Now, first of all, the fact that he didn't want to mention, an example of these toxic men online that brag about, money, cars, and, like properties and houses and shit. I don't know. Personally speaking, I feel like the moment he said that, I figured that, if someone online was to do that, their first name would be Andrew, and it would be one of two Andrews that he'd be referring to. But because I know of only one that was bragging about properties as well as multiple cars, okay. Anyways, I wouldn't say that it's Andrew Tate, but all that said and done, that was on a much lighter note. Now, the whole men are struggling because, unlike women, we don't have authenticity. And maybe if our role models and mentors were more vulnerable, I don't think so. Like, I can get the angle that he's coming from, but personally, I don't think so. And there's a myriad of examples as to why I don't think so. But the bigger underlying meaning is, I don't think that they have to show you all the sides of themselves, because, like, have you ever heard of this statement, don't meet your heroes? Because the moment you meet them, you realize just how flawed they are, and they no longer seem as heroic as they are. Like, looking up to people, in my opinion, is not as good of an idea as opposed to looking up to ideals and values. Like, those are things that I believe are much better than looking up to an individual. Now, you can look up to an individual that embodies those values to a point, but understanding that they are also human beings and they are finite and they are flawed just as human beings is something that can help you become a much better person and not particularly fixate on the person instead of the ideal. And that's a very easy way to get around because you think about it, all the smart people that decided to take PhDs because they looked up to Einstein, did they have to look at how Einstein lived? No. All the people that have gone ahead to build massive businesses or to create a bunch of success as far as entrepreneurship or, like paving a way in a particular field or industry or sector, like, did they have to look at how their mentors lived their entire days as well as how they related with people to really know that? Like, did the mentors have to be vulnerable with them for them to know that? No, I don't think that's entirely necessary. Just mostly because as human beings, one, we're flawed. Two, it's not like we're out here busy trying to show how good or bad our flaws are. We're always trying to show our best selves, and even the idea that is quote-unquote authentic as far as being a person is concerned, it's one of the 4 faces that you can show as a human being. And it kind of goes back to this whole thing that I think it's sort of Japanese saying, or this Japanese belief that you have 4 faces. There's the face that you know that everyone else sees. There's the face that you don't know that everyone else sees. There's the face that no one sees that you know. And then there's the face that you don't know that no one else sees. It's one of those 4 faces, and being authentic is one of those faces, but ideally it's supposed to not be too different from the other one, where even though people see you and you're not trying to put up a face, they can kind of still see that there's barely any difference. And being authentic is a nice thing. The idea of authenticity is nice. It's just, as far as assisting men when it comes to struggling, that's not entirely a thing. Like, we started this whole thing of trying to figure out what it is that our favorite role models did with their lives besides what it is that made them role models, when people started following what it is that these guys do, like keeping up with the Kardashians. And honestly, it's not like a lot of these women meet their idols and they realize their idols are this great people. Like, there's people that are trailblazers out here, yet in person they're absolutely shitty women. There was a very recent story, I think it was sometime this year, if not last year, of a lady that was filmed, mistreating her house help. And yet this is a woman that was heading an NGO that was about helping young women progress up and, become empowered and shit. And yet she was mistreating and actually beating her house help. Like, we don't need to know everything about the people that we look at as our idols. We should be looking at the ideals that they stand for and emulating those. And, that's just my opinion. And, you could probably even end the episode there. But in an interesting twist, in as much as he was busy talking about all this authenticity, he kind of did say something that was very true. The whole talk about, men, going for something that they think they want because they don't know what they want, and following this example because they seem like the best embodiment of that, is actually making a lot of men unhappy. And that is actually true. A lot of men today do not have direction. A lot of men do not know what it is that makes them happy, because all they were given, like I mentioned earlier, is this whole preconditioning of, or should I say, all of this conditioning of what it is that you're supposed to be as a man. You're being told, as a man, you're supposed to do this, this, and that. And there's these duties and responsibilities. But after that, what are you as a man? And that kind of ends up plaguing a lot of guys, because the moment you're not able to fulfill your duties and responsibilities, or the moment it's not entirely asked of you, and there's this shell of you that is just there existing, the question of who you are and what it is that you stand for can be one of the things that saves you from going down a very dark path. And that's where the value of purpose comes in. Like I mentioned, the statement that Adam Lane Smith, attachment psychologist, once said online: you give a man purpose and he will crawl through broken glass with a smile. All right, like that's essentially what purpose is for men. Like, it is our reason for living. And having purpose is something that is so powerful for men. And I don't think people fully understand just how important it is up until you realize that for a lot of men who suddenly become fathers or become fathers, just generally, their entire thought process and how they think, act, and behave can automatically change the moment they see that child for the very first time. And I kid you not, go and talk to any person that recently became a dad. All right, go and ask them about, them going to the hospital with their babe, their baby mama, their wife, whatever, and seeing that child for the very first time and what it did to them. Like, every single time you ask about that, or most times when you ask about it, you will be told this whole thing of my life changed completely, and how I thought about the world and how I thought about everything automatically shifted. Like, that's a statement that you will hear a lot of men who become fathers at some point in their lives saying quite a bit, because how you think about the world automatically shifts, because now your purpose has completely changed from, wanting to please yourself or wanting to fulfill this particular duty or this thing that you've wanted to be or get for a long time in your life, to ensuring that this life that you've brought to the world or that you've helped bring to the world is taken care of, is well fed, is well nourished, is comfortable, and that you do everything possible to protect them and prepare them for the world that they will find in the future, or even the world that they are experiencing in the present. Like, that thought process, that change is so powerful for men that it can automatically shift their drive, and you might even find them being more driven at that time than ever before. Even though now they have more responsibilities, now they have to pay a little bit more attention to certain things in the house. Like, they will automatically change, and that's how powerful the power of purpose is. So when you do give them that purpose, and then you can attach it to a mentor, regardless of what the dream is, regardless of what the sense of direction is, you can very easily create some sort of plan to implement things for you as a person. And it'll be a lot easier to follow through with that plan, not because you have a mentor, not because, you suddenly have this implementation process and you are, motivated for that first time, but because there's a purpose that is driving you to make the decisions that you intend on making on a near day-to-day or even minute-by-minute basis. And then now, at that point, you can get to the level where, the women seem to have it way better than the men, and that is the presence of a support system. And at that point, now you can see where it is that a lot of men are struggling, because in as much as we can try to put all of these things there, if you do not have a good support system, then, whatever bad times you're going to go through are the ones that are going to make you crumble. It's basically like building a pyramid upside down and trying to hold it all together with a couple of twigs. The moment the wind blows or the moment a flood comes through, like, that shit is being knocked and it'll fall down and it'll very easily break, because support systems are just as important as every other element there. And I see this every time whenever it comes to a lot of the women that are close to me, in that when they are going through something, they know that they can call a friend and they can vent and they'll be listened to, and whatever it is that they're venting about will be taken. With the men though, it doesn't go down like that. A lot of times men will kind of just sit with their issues or, kind of go through things on their own. One, because some of the things that they go through, they feel embarrassed to talk about, and other times they just don't feel like there's anyone there to listen to them. And when you pair that up with people that just expect you to do stuff and they don't really appreciate you for anything, of course it's going to drive some men over the edge. Of course it's going to start pushing them down a path that is less than right for them. Like, it's those support systems that kind of keep you grounded and also kind of keep you going, because they kind of solidify the work that you're doing. So as far as why it is men are struggling, I'll say it's not about a lack of authenticity. I'd say that it comes down to a lack of, one, purpose. If you have purpose, then two, there is the mentorship, the guidance from those that have come before you and have been in your position before. But even with that, the biggest one that kind of has to tie the two together is a support system. Actually, you could technically even put mentorship under the support system, because they'd be the ones to talk you through how to handle a situation like that, not just externally and as far as actions and behaviors go, but also internally in terms of how you feel when you're in that position. So if we can get those 3 bits sorted for men, I do believe that we can reduce the number of statistics of men committing suicide or men in depression on a day-to-day or even a year-to-year level. And to kind of conclude all of this, when you're looking at building a good man or good men in the society, you kind of have to think about it as a building. You will have to define what kind of building you want to have. So let's say you want, a nice, massive, beautiful house. So how are you going to, end up with a nice, massive, beautiful house? First, you start by going to an architect, or, you have some design of the house, or you have the house designed for you, as far as exterior and interior goes. So, that's a pretty good idea of purpose. So you kind of have to have all of that. But now you're going to have to know how it is that house is going to be built like that. So now that's where the consultants, the surveyors, and the contractors come in. They'll tell you, we're going to need this much material, you're going to need to do A, B, C, and D, and this is the implementation plan that we intend on having over X amount of time, whether it's weeks, months, years, you name it, and we're going to need this and this materials. All right. And then for you to do all of that, of course, you can have the house, and as all of that's happening and as it's busy being built up, what you'll notice if you go and you look at any construction is that there's always going to be things that support whatever project, whatever building is being built. And that's where support systems come in, because if you do not have a system to support it, whether it is a tall building, whether it is a flat building, if there is nothing to support it, then it can very easily crumble, because stuff is going to happen and nature doesn't really care that you love your building all that much. So for the men out here, if you have a good support system, regardless of the challenges or whatever challenges come your way, if the support system is strong enough, then there's a very good chance you'll be able to weather the storm. Although then again, maybe I could be wrong about this and I don't entirely understand. Maybe authenticity might actually be the thing that we need. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the BreaktimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.